Hello, my friends. I'm Shay Marville. Welcome to the second season of Let's Talk, a podcast dedicated to healing and growing through conversations, stories, and deep listening. We are an alchemy of one another. Talking helps us to relieve our burdens, to suffer less, because we are each other's medicine if we choose. So let's talk. Hello, my friends. Welcome to Let's Talk. On today's episode, I had the great privilege of chatting with globally respected leader, member of the Forbes Business Council, CEO and co-founder of Obie Ax, Andrew O'Brien. He's a serial entrepreneur. He's grown and sold 4 companies. He was a partner and chief revenue officer at Buytopia and successfully incubated many, many companies. But it was 4 years ago and his own struggle with mental health and addiction that really changed his life and inspired the growth of a new company. Take a listen to the show. Tell us what you think. Andrew, welcome to Let's Talk. It is an honor to spend some time with you in the pod. How are you doing?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Shay. Always a pleasure to catch up.
Listen, I was excited to talk to you and curious at the same time about how you entered the podcasting world and what inspired you to do that in the middle of a pandemic and build this company.
So we have a very interesting story that I think kind of relates back to our core values, which gave birth to Obie Ax Inc. I essentially had sold a couple of businesses with a few of my longtime partners, about a year and a half, 2 years before the pandemic started. And I realized at that point I needed to take control of my life again. And I realized that I had some addiction issues that I needed to look into. So I got clean. I'm almost 4 years clean today, but it allowed me. I wanted to start a podcast to discuss addiction and mental health and how it ties into entrepreneurship. So we decided to do our own show. And then as I had brought in some of the leadership that I have, grown to be friends with over a number of years, from Toronto Police, NASA, FDA, FBI. A lot of these organizations were interested to see how my team and I could build this for them. And then Obie Ax was kind of born into the largest podcast production firm in the US and Canada.
Wow, that's such an extraordinary story. So just to back up a little bit, you have been a serial entrepreneur and you've built some really, huge, successful companies. And you sold your companies, you're sort of transitioning, recognized prior to the pandemic, you had some issues around addiction and decided to focus on that. And then after you focused on that and you understood your own story, you start to share the story through the module of podcasting, right? And then this business was born out of you sharing and expressing your own story. Other people were inspired by that.
Yeah, I think doing things for the right reasons, it all stems back to, what do you want? What are your core values? What is your brand?
Yes.
And my brand, before I decided to get clean, was about the outer surface. And, once your outside matches your insides, then you'll be successful.
Really successful. Like where it's in yoga, we say, like the yoke, right? Yoga is like about this, like yoking together your mind, your body, and your breath. And so but you know what I also wonder about? You were not in the media business prior. And podcasting is a media business, isn't it? Or
well, I think
enlighten me.
I think it is at the surface, but realistically, it's a marketing and communication tool. So I had been selling marketing solutions for over a decade, and what appears to most people as, it is a function of media, absolutely. But what it really is, it's a longer way for a company or government to engage the user. So therefore, it's a marketing platform. it also is a content monster. So when we talk about one of the biggest problems or challenges that government and corporations face is how do we create touching, authentic, humanized content? Well, here you have it. So it's a content beast as much as it is a way to sell your services, talk about diversity, inclusion, talk about talent acquisition, talk about leadership, talk about, really anything. But it gives you much more of a platform to engage the user.
Who is the user in your mind? Like, is the user the employee on the inside of the organization, and the user is the person who buys the product and service? Are there multiple users?
The users are who the government or corporations want to use their service. So taxpayers are the users for the podcast. Internal teams could be the users for the podcast. Direct B2C could be users for the podcast. So the best part about the podcast is that it is a chameleon and can take the shape of many faces and cater to many different faces as well. So you can use the podcast for it's multiple vehicles. So if you wanted to talk about your innovation, your product development, your actual products, you could then use that as a sales tool. But you could also then build another podcast series to cater it specifically for your internal teams. And then you could even build another one to cater to shareholders.
Oh, see, this is also really fascinating, like your take on it, because it's not about selling. It's about building a relationship through, sharing content, through the propagation of your experience of the message you're sharing, but you're not selling.
You're never selling. And I think, that's incorrect. Most of the world sell, and that's the problem. Your best salespeople in the world, this is my background, was sales since I was 15 for 25 years. You're an expert and you're telling a story. So if you're able to tell a story while teaching somebody things they don't know, so they rely on you for intel, that's what the podcast is there for. The podcast is the ability to actually tell a story for the government, for the brands, and then become that expert through real people and experiences and places.
You mentioned that you've been selling since you were 15 and working really, like, building businesses. Can I ask you, like, what motivated you to be that way at such a young age?
Attention deficit disorder. I think
not funny, but
I've never been diagnosed, but I'm sure it's there to the nth degree. I always wanted to be free and create. I started a business when I was 9 called A&R Maintenance, where I went door to door and I convinced people, this is at 9 years old, convinced people to let me cut their lawn and do the trimming. And then I even built posters, and I had a picture of a shark I drew on it because I'm that old and there wasn't any technology. So I built posters, I put them in the post office, and actually received phone calls to the point where my dad thought it was creepy that grown adults were calling for his child at the house, which he was uncomfortable with. But nonetheless, then I realized I had around 15 or 20 different jobs that I actually was getting $20 a lawn. And then I realized, I really don't want to do the actual work. So then I actually brought in the R to that group to do the maintenance and actually cut the lawns while I went out and got the business. So it's just been a natural part of me. And I think that for the most part, I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed going door to door. I enjoyed being I've always been an entrepreneur, and I wasn't getting money for it for the most part. So
did you come from a family of entrepreneurs? Like, were your parents entrepreneurial?
My family, my mother, my father, and my grandfather were all on Bay Street. They all worked for the big banks as brokers. So no, they were very corporate, and I've always been very wild and driven to create my own opportunity.
So did your parents, did they support you at 9 saying, like, this kid's going to go off and do his own thing where he can do it, he's fine?
Well, my mother had throat cancer when I was 7. She actually had throat cancer of the cancer of the trachea when she was 21. And then when I was 7, it came back and she had throat cancer. And I used to go and visit her for 2 years before she passed away when I was 9. So right
Oh,
around that time, I think that it happened. And I don't look at things as good or bad. I just look at things as that they just are. And now when looking back, it allowed me to grow. It made me actually go out and go door to door at that time, probably just to get out and get my mind off things that I didn't understand in the first place. So it was part of my journey that made me uncomfortable, but grew me into a very strong beast, later on.
yeah. And I think also in trying to understand grief when you're a child, it's hard to put it into words. So you sound like you were somebody who wanted to take action. You needed to take control of your life in some way and use that as a way to grow forward.
You do what you do because sometimes that's all you know how to do. And is it right or wrong? No, I think it's just you're where you are because you're where you are. I don't read too much into things. I just honestly, I think my mom got sick and I watched her die for 2 years and then she died. And then I had to move on because I wasn't dead.
No. Well, do you think
That's it.
that learning that or experiencing that, let me rephrase that, experiencing that at an early age showed you how to adapt continually? Because you seem to be someone who is always observing where the trends are going, able to adapt and move very quickly. I mean, you went from having a podcasting show where you're trying to be of service to building a podcasting company where you're building shows for other organizations and very large organizations.
Yeah, I kind of look at myself as somebody that is just able to take really bad situations and make them really good
Hmm.
because that is what they are encased in crap. They're diamonds. I really
Yes.
believe that. I really believe that, you have a broken leg or whatever ailment you have, but that just means you have to go double time at the gym. That means you have to double down when no one's watching. When your mom dies, what does that mean? It means that, you're insecure and sad. And during my time from a very, when Bane says he was born in the dark, I related with that. People
Mm.
embraced it later. I've been there my whole life. I know what it feels like to be excluded. Left out of class when people are building Valentine's cards for their mom because they didn't want me being sad in class. But then I was sent outside in the hallway. I've been in different places where I just felt empty, but that built me a lot stronger and more resilient. And it made me look for things to grab
Mm.
onto.
Yes.
And so when
Yes.
I look at situations like COVID, I look at it like this is change. This is growth for everybody everywhere. And instead of standing still, move your
Mm.
feet. Even if you don't know where you're going, you have to move your feet. Most people, in my opinion, especially entrepreneurs, it's not the risk they took. It's just standing still that kills them.
Yes. Yeah. No, I can relate to that. I can relate to so many things you've just said, just about using these dramatic experiences to pivot and kind of propel you into something, even if you don't know what that something is, right? And the podcasting market is just, or ecosystem is just, it's full, right? But at the same time, we're just at the beginning, don't you think, in terms of like really good podcast shows rising, great content rising, and some incredible interesting people rising out of it as well.
Yeah, I mean, we're just scratching the surface in the industry. And I think
Mm.
right now it's more of a lack of education when it comes to companies and corporations or companies and government bodies
What,
rather.
what do you mean by that?
Well, a lot of them don't know that it's been growing at 27% in the US since 2019, or 31% on a global level. Most of them don't know that it's $11 billion in the US as an evaluated market in 2020. And most of them don't know that it's supposed to be 95 billion by 2028. Most of them don't know that there's more listeners for Podcast Weekly than LinkedIn, Snapchat, and Twitter. So it's the education component, and that's where Obie and Ax are experts, and we know this. So it's our job to enlighten them. And then I think the other component to the education is they don't realize the full capabilities of the podcast. They don't realize that they can work smarter and more efficiently while being more cost effective. If you have something that's creating your content for a year, not only creating it, but making it 100 times better and more impactful and hitting 10 different birds with that one stone, they just don't know, or they would have done it already.
Yeah, no, I think one of the things that's really exciting about what Obie and Ax is doing is, because of the breadth of the content that you're creating and the level it's created at, you can then also break it into smaller pieces for different platforms. And so you're doing all the work up front rather than, trying to catch up and then put this on, create this for TikTok, create this piece for Instagram, create this piece for LinkedIn. I think that's really, really a kind of fascinating way to do it. And then I think for the person, the people who require the work, I think for them, you're cutting out so much effort, right?
Yeah, I think the big thing is, for when we look at, so there's different layers to any of these types of decisions that get made. So if you look at some of the larger corporations, there's the higher ranking executives who are looking for, here's the results. Well, the podcast can align the results, and they love it. And that's why we're growing at 300+%. And then you look at somebody that handles the communications. Now, for them to do the podcast internally, the amount of elbow grease, Obie and Ax takes 90+% of that off their hands and gives them a great world-class product that they can just use as their weapon. So we're actually an asset, and we act as an extension of one's marketing or comms team. Because we're entrepreneurs, I've been longtime partners with Michele, who you may know from the Den, and
Yes.
One of the biggest areas that we're seeing, where I think is a real hurdle for agencies and some of these other, larger agencies, really, is just that they're slower moving. Entrepreneurs are more nimble. We're faster. We execute at a higher level typically. So we're already way ahead of the curve. They should just probably look to buy us at some point. Would be probably the best move for them. But by the time they can't match our prices, we hire the best quality in the world all in-house. We move faster. We're ahead. And the agencies will charge 3, 4, 5 times the amount. That's one side of it. And then if they were to do it internally, you're looking at, hundreds of hours. You're talking about having multiple base salaries working on this, or you're going to just triple your team's plate, and they're not professional podcasters.
No.
So, right. And then there's gear, and there's
so much. Yeah. But tell me about this. We're at the beginning, still at the beginning of 2022. Tell me a little bit about your entrepreneurial mindset, because 2022, 2023 for entrepreneurs, what is it? The Wild West? Is it what is it for entrepreneurs right now?
I think it's always the Wild West. We're just, fighting in a different town. There's always a huge element of risk. There's always a huge element of competition. Mind you, I like to pave the way, and I don't like to even use the word competitor. I don't copy anyone. And I think competitors are kind of, cutting each other's grass. And I think entrepreneurs today have to look at what business is going to be like for the next 5 years. And when we look at what was disrupted, was brick and mortar. The days of everybody going back full time, paying $80,000 a month rent, or some of these, companies were doing. I think we've just learned, and people are moving now away from the traditional media. And we have to look at what's making the user tick, and also what's driving these businesses forward. And we really need to look at bringing, vital solutions towards, our clients or prospects, rather than giving them something just to pick between whichever
Right.
logo they like. It's like the telecoms thing here in Canada. They're
Oh,
all the same evil. It just depends what
terrible.
logo, which color you like. I think it's about, nowadays, more so than anything, it's about making sure that with technology, you got to really make sure you know where to put your dollars and cents to make sure that you're getting the most juice out of that tank. And then I also think that you need to really understand what's making these businesses tick, and then how are they measuring that?
Yeah. Tell me what makes you tick? Like, as you have moved through the last 25 months, what's really doing it for you? Like, what's motivating you? I mean, obviously you've got an incredible company, your partner Ax and your whole team, incredible board, really vital, diverse, dynamic group. But for you, like, who's done so much already, what is it?
Honestly, my team makes me tick. When I talk to Axel and the rest of the team, I learn from them. I'm the senior citizen of the company. They breathe some life back into these old bones, and they energize me, and they make me want to be the best that I can be, to help change my life, their life. It's a real team and family here, and my team really energizes me. I also have a family, just engaged, and so
Congratulations.
yeah, she said yes. Can you believe it? So yeah, I do all right. So I think it's just life. We're here right now, and if there's one thing I've learned, my parents are gone. Most of my immediate family has passed away, and one thing I've learned is be here today. And then I ask myself, what do I want? And I want options. I don't want to be told what to do. I want to go on
Yes.
vacation wherever I want to go. I want to take my family whenever we want to go. I want to be able to use my craft and my ability to help change the lives of my team and
Mm,
the individuals that I'm responsible for as the CEO. There's a lot of different things that motivate me, but most of all, don't put off what you can do today. So
do you think what you just described as your desire, do you think most people could have that if they wanted it?
there is very big differences between desire. I had the desire to stop using drugs and alcohol
Mm,
since I was 16. Every weekend I wanted to stop, and then I'd get a phone call and I'd go back out again. I had the desire.
right.
Without action, you have nothing. One thing that my recovery has taught me is that there are a lot of people that have desire to do a lot of things. It could be get clean. It could be spend more time with their kids. It could be go to the gym. It could be anything. It could be, I want to do this business. I want to get it to the next level. I want to work on myself, whatever it might be. Action. All humans are created. I think it was Emmett Smith or Deion Sanders said this thing, and he said, all man is created equal. Some work harder in preseason. I think everybody has desire to do a lot of things. But I think what separates the pack is the
Mhm.
action to do it consistently every single day. Because people say to me, I've been interviewed before, and people say, how did Obie Ax get here and do this? Well, listen, I'll tell them, and I'll tell you, as I tell my team, put your head down, do the right things every minute of the day, work
Yeah.
hard. When you think you should quit, put in an extra hour. Do that every day. Do the right things every day. And those little things will add up, and you'll see that. But you got to do most of the work that you do is when no one's watching. It's so true.
It's
It's
so
behind the
true.
scenes, right?
It's so
And
true.
yeah.
I really appreciate what you're saying because I think, there's a lot of glamour around being an entrepreneur, but very few people see the amount of work, like the 20 hours a day sometimes that goes in to building one little thing. But it's when you keep building all those little things consistently that you actually build something that is significant. And it's one of the things I really appreciate about you. I really appreciate that you're accessible, you're consistent, you play hard, and you do not pretend that what you do is easy, and you make other people feel like they can be a part of it. So, listen, I know you're busy, but I am so grateful for your time and your attention.
My pleasure. Anything for you, Shay. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm Shay Marville, and you've been listening to Let's Talk, a podcast dedicated to healing and growing. You can follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. And listen, I need your help to grow the reach of this show. Could you, would you, please subscribe, rate, and review us on any platform that you're listening to. I'd love to hear your feedback. Ciao for now.